I'm originally from Venezuela. I was raised here in Australia, and I have a fairly interesting background in regards to that because up until my teenage years, I didn't realise I had such a strong Spanish heritage, which drove me to want to learn a bit more about Spanish food. I already had a fairly good idea of Latin food because I was raised on Latin American food, but then I took some interest in Spanish food, especially the tapas and the paellas, which really sparked my interest. For many years, I tried introducing Latin American food to the Australian public in my catering outlet. So I was doing a lot of event catering and private catering, but I felt that it was relatively unknown. It was just something that people just didn't understand. They're always interested in something new and different, but I felt that there was that boundary that still stopped them from exploring that cuisine. I feel it's come a long way now, and I think people understand Latin American food a lot more now, but we're talking 20 years ago. It was a very different story. It was very hard for people to comprehend or understand some of the products that we used. I had the very same problem when I first introduced paellas in events. I was one of the first to do the paellas, and it was just difficult because people didn't recognise the product as international as it was. The reputation of the paella, people didn't know what it was, and so they were a bit sceptical, a bit hesitant to purchase or to try it. So, and you can imagine with something like that it's even better known than Latin American food, whereas it was so difficult that I eventually gave up with it and went down a different path, and that's where I started with Spanish food. I originally started the Spanish catering at the events. So I started, I believe, at Johnson Street, the Hispanic festival there. It was immediately a success, I suppose, because it was in that community of people that understood what the product was. But over the years, with everything else that we do in this world, we bring something from our culture back to this country, to Australia, but we lose something. We lose an integral part of the product itself, whether it's the ingredients or the technique. Something goes astray, and it's maybe because sometimes we can't get the exact products. I realised that perhaps the technique wasn't 100% authentic, so I decided to go to Spain. I went to Valencia, a little town called Sueca, just outside of Valencia in Spain, where every year they hold the Concurso de Paella Valenciano. This has been going on for around 50, 60 years now. I think this competition's been there. And it is considered the correct authority, I suppose, the authentic body that governs the product. It says, what a paella is. And so I thought you couldn't go to a better place to learn how to make a correct paella. So it teaches you about the rice, the techniques, and how it's cooked. And most of all, the product itself, the key elements that make a paella. And I still recall the very first time we went there. I went there with this mentality that I knew what I was doing, because I was doing paellas in Australia and we were very successful and everything was going very well, and I quickly learned that it wasn't correct, it wasn't right. And at the end, I didn't place anything in Spain. I bombed out big time because I was still cooking from the bad habits that I had learned here, from my understanding of what a paella was, but not really understanding what a paella was. And so I went back to the drawing board and I did some research there, and I spoke to some experts, and they showed me how to cook, and we look at the techniques and how it's supposed to be done. And so the following year we went back and we tried again, and that year we won the best paella outside of Spain. So I was really pleased with that. I thought that was such a big thing for us here in Australia, because it just showed that you can do this. It doesn't have to be just Spain all the time that does this. And we've been back several times since, and we've collected that prize twice. And the other 3 times that we've been there, we've been in the top 10 in the world. So all our achievements have been really rewarding for us. Physically, at the restaurant, it's really paid off. But just personally, it's been an incredible development for me. As an ambassador to the paella here in Australia, I think it's a great thing. It's a great thing that we were able to do to put Australia on the map for Spanish food. Since receiving the award, we've done many classes. We've taught people how to cook the paella. We obviously, with our catering, we showcase the products throughout the festival season, throughout Victoria and country Victoria as well. I think if you're going to pinpoint one product in that paella that really tells you that it's a paella, it would have to be the paprika, because I think that's the key element in just about every paella. It has a good quality paprika, whether it's smoked or sweet, it's still a paprika, and I think that is the key element for a good paella. I mentioned earlier that when the paella travels, it tends to be adapted to that environment. When I was in Venezuela and through Latin America, they have a dish called arroz con pollo. And it's essentially a paella, but rather than being cooked in a paella pan, it's cooked in a pot. And they would use very similar sort of products, some chicken, they might use a bit of tomato in there, some other vegetables, a bit of paprika, and sometimes maybe even the saffron in there to give it the colour. But it has travelled and it has morphed into different product or different dishes, but essentially it all comes down to it originates from the original paella that from Spain. Like anything else, to know how to cook a paella is a great achievement. There's a feeling of accomplishment. When you understand how to cook a paella, it is quite straightforward, and there's a few principles that you just need to follow, and you will get a perfect product every time. Don't overcrowd the pan, don't overdo the ingredients. So there's a ratio between the proteins and the rice and the stock that you would use to cook that perfectly. And obviously on top of that, you need to put the elements in there that are going to flavour the paella. But having said that, when you've achieved it and you've cooked a paella, it's a beautiful meal. It's a really good meal and something that you could replicate and enjoy for many years. For me, my special story, I suppose, with the paella is I have memories of my mother cooking paellas at parties, and it was always so popular. It was the most amazing dish that everyone would gather around, and she would slowly put this together over a few hours, cooking it away and adding the chicken and adding the seafood and adding the rice and cooking it up. And it was always the focus at every party was Mum's paella. And I knew very little of it because I still saw my mother as a Latin American woman, but she had Spanish heritage. Her ancestors were from the Canary Islands, and they taught her a bit about how to make the paellas, which I was not aware of until I was a teenager, I suppose. But I always remember that being the focus of every party, and that's what sort of drew me to cooking the paellas. I liked the fact that it was a recognised dish, and it was something that was so beautiful to enjoy, especially amongst friends. When there was a large gathering, you put a big pan together and suddenly 20 people could eat comfortably. It was amazing. I think the mystery behind the paella is people are just unsure how to cook it. I think it's just like boiling rice. Some people can boil and make a great pot of rice and other people just can't get it right. And I think the issue with this is, and if you've attempted to make an paella in the past, you've probably experienced the fact that you couldn't cook it right. Too much rice, or your rice burnt, or it didn't have a lot of flavour. And to give an example, I judged on MasterChef on Series 13, and there were 3 very, very talented chefs there that had to cook a paella. Now, they all made the very simple mistake that just about everyone does, is they overcrowded the pan. A small pan really just needs about a cup of rice, and that will create an amazing paella. Whereas if you're not familiar with that, you'd probably took 2 or 3 cups of rice in there thinking, oh, this will be perfect. But then you've got a problem, it's just not going to cook right. So we take some of that mystery away and just show people how it's done, and the results are usually very, very good. Always very, very good. Hi, I'm Leno from Simply Spanish, owner and head chef, and I invite you to Sabores Latinos, where I will teach you how to make the perfect paella. I'm going to create a fusion paella with some key elements from here in Australia, some from Spain, and we're going to create a truly magnificent paella for you to enjoy and cook at home. Look forward to seeing you.